to a special National Volunteer Week interview with Nicole Graycar. Nicole is a longtime friend of the Caring Place. Along with her older sister and her father, Nicole was part of the Caring Place from the very beginning.
Some years after that connection, Nicole became a volunteer in the very place she had once been helped by earlier volunteers. Currently, Nicole is an architect, owning her own company, Carol's Daughter Consulting and Development. Nicole, thanks so much for talking with us for this National Volunteer Week.
So Nicole, you and your
Thank
family—
you for having me. It's nice to see you.
It's great to have you here. Thanks so much for being with us. So you and your family were in the first groups that the Caring Place held, even before it was called the Caring Place. So tell us what brought you and your family to the Caring Place.
When I was 5, my mom passed away, and it was something that you didn't really have any type of support structure because we didn't know anybody who had gone through the same thing. And I think specifically for myself, it was a really hard transition because about 14 months after mom died, my dad remarried. And so we had really transitioned into this new life with a new mom. And so for a lot of, life events and in a lot of ways, I felt like I didn't really even have a way to acknowledge that she existed. And so coming to the Caring Place was really that space that I needed to really get to know her and get to grieve her because, we had this sort of family at home.
So you were a little bit older by the time you got to the Caring Place, but how did your experience at the Caring Place help you?
I was 9 when I first started coming. And at that point, you understand that death is permanent. And, for a long time you don't. And so I had a lot of anger and a lot of confusion and really just didn't know how to accept that, especially because we had transitioned into a new family structure so quickly. And so I think at that age, I really craved this space to process someone who was really just a figment of my imagination in so many ways. And at the Caring Place, I was able to say her name, and even that allowance to speak her name and to talk about her favorite color and her life and really acknowledge that just because I had a stepmom, that loss was still so profound. And, and looking back, having my dad move on so quickly was actually very traumatic. And so the Caring Place really was a godsend because as a child, you just don't understand.
Yeah, you mentioned it was a space for you to kind of re-greet your mom.
Yeah.
So do you have memories about any of the volunteers from that time?
I do, actually. One was Maureen. And then also there was one staff member who's such an integral part of the group as well, named Beth. And I remember when she went on maternity leave, and not being able to see her. But, each group is made by the volunteers. And I always remember faces. And so it's almost like a slide reel when you go through your groups and remember them. But I think that, if I hadn't had those people who had given of their free time, I'm not sure what I would have done, because, as an adult, you realize that it's always with you. And if you don't process it, you don't escape it. It's with you every day.
Nicole, I remember when you first called me and told me that you were interested in becoming a volunteer. What made you make that decision?
I think I always wanted to give back, but I was also very nervous because I was so in awe of my volunteers. I didn't quite think I was up to the task. And I remember that I was actually called in to help in the preschool room in the middle of a group. And that was probably the way I felt comfortable, because I didn't think I could live up to the ideal of the people that had helped me so much. And then it was only after, helping just with the little kids that I actually went through volunteer training.
Well, that's really interesting.
Oh, okay, maybe I'm not so bad at this. Because I wanted to be useful, and I wanted to be enough. And I think because of my experience being so meaningful in my life, it was daunting to think about being that for somebody else. But I also knew that it was transformative, and it was such a time in my life where I had nowhere else to turn. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to say that, like, being a volunteer is not easy. I mean, I find it very emotional. I find it very taxing. But like, you still want to do it. You still show up. You still make that space for them because someone made that space for you.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really interesting that, coming into the preschool room and being with the little kids, the ones who feel so unsafe sometimes, really made you feel safe enough to want to move on to volunteer.
Yeah, and I will say that I've never volunteered in the adult room because I still feel underqualified to work with the adults. And it's more so wanting to be as available for people's needs as I can. And I just feel, because my experience is so personal with a child's experience, that's why I feel more comfortable in the children's rooms.
Okay. Well, what was it like moving from being a Caring Place family member to being a volunteer?
I think it was really important to me that I volunteered at the downtown location, because that I understood it there. I understood what the rooms felt like to a child. And just because I wanted to be able to understand as best that I could. Because even though there's so many different types of loss and types of, death that these family members have gone through, and it's so different than my experience. It's, I think it's very important that you take that step back from your own experience and you really sort of become that listener and that really that just supporter of each child's personal journey. And so I think that as you become a volunteer, you realize that everyone is so unique. And so things that you experienced may or may not apply. And recognizing that your job is to facilitate that space. And so you really have to think on your feet as to what does, each child need, and really respond in the moment to make sure that, they're getting that individual sometimes it's a very individual connection that will really allow someone to open up. So it's definitely, no 2 days in group are the same ever.
That's for sure.
Yeah, very true. But speaking of your own experience, when you volunteered at the Caring Place, you facilitated some of the same age groups that you participated in as a family member. What was that like for you?
It's interesting because I have facilitated from preschool through the teenage room, but in the age group that I was, you definitely do recognize the same sort of intellectual understanding that you remember. And I think that is really important in groups, because as you sort of move through, your grief journey, it's very contextual of how it impacts the stage of life that you're in, and how your person relates to that stage of your growth. And so you see a lot of they couldn't come to my softball game, or they couldn't be at my school play. And I think that it's those relationships that that really set the tone for each age group. And so I find that to be, when I work in the same in the middle room, that are the most striking for me.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. What was the hardest and most rewarding part of being a volunteer?
I think for me, I find it very hard to leave them at the Caring Place. I've been volunteering, I guess it's been 10 years now since I first started doing groups. And I think about them a lot during the week. And I think I just get so invested in them. And when you learn so much about them, one in particular really loved Rubik's cubes. And so I literally can't see a Rubik cube without thinking about him, still to this day. This was years ago. And so I think that maybe other people are maybe better at that, but I think I keep so many of them, probably all of them, with me. But I think that I always say that I volunteer to honor my mom as well. So it's very, I think it's very full circle. So maybe that's why I hold on to them so long.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, thinking of your mom, well, I remember that young girl finding herself at the Caring Place and speaking at the dedication of the Pittsburgh site, which was a pretty big thing for such a young girl with all those people around, cameras.
Mr. Rogers sat right
And
next to him.
I remember that. Must have been a highlight.
Oh, yes. Yes. I didn't know any of the Steelers, but I knew Mr. Rogers.
As well, you should.
Yes.
That totally makes sense.
Yes.
And now you own your own company.
I do.
So what's the name of your company again, and what's the meaning behind the name?
Well, my company came about very quickly, and my attorney said, "Okay, I need a name for your company," and I had never thought of one. And so there I am racking my brain, and literally the only name that came to mind was Carol's Daughter Consulting and Development. And then after that, like, there was no other option. And so that was my legal name. And so on marketing and stuff, it goes by CD Squared. But on my website, it does say under the section that says "Get to know Nicole," and it says to know Nicole is to know that she is Carol's daughter. Mm. And to me, that says a lot, because I think that my loss has been so profound in my life. And because of my age when she died, I don't even know who I'd be if she were alive, but I take the experience and I channel it through my work with the Caring Place. And especially through my company, working with nonprofits, working with the foundation community. And so you do good when you're working in memory of somebody.
And just so people know, what is it your company does with nonprofits?
Since I'm an architect, I now work as an owner's representative. And so for any nonprofits, and I do work with some for-profits that are doing large capital projects, so renovations, additions, and really helping them get the space that they need to push their mission forward. So I think it is very exciting to kind of take a group and help them do what they do even better.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Nicole, what do you think has been the effect of the Caring Place on your life? And do you think you'd be where you are today if you hadn't had the experience of the Caring Place?
Wow, that's such a loaded question.
It is a loaded question.
I definitely would not be. I think that loss is always hard, but I think that loss for a young girl at 5 of a mother, it's extremely developmentally profound. And so, I find that so much of me is because of it. And I find that if I hadn't have been able to explore that and process that at the Caring Place, I would have had even more challenges in my teen years, moving into adulthood. And I think that, just recently I lost my grandmother, and not only going through that loss personally, but with my 3 young nieces, and being able to view that loss through their eyes and help them experience their first major loss. And, going through that, helping my friends and my family go through loss. And it's also, amazing. And I have an amazing therapist who has worked with me on attachment theory and how, this type of loss at 5 really has affected me in romantic relationships, and, how critical that is with how we, find ourselves in any other relationship in our life, because of this type of bond that is broken at 5. And, and I think, almost 3 years ago, I was in a really bad car accident where I had a head injury, and I wasn't able to talk or walk or anything like that. And in that moment in the ER, trying to get out that my mom died of a brain aneurysm, and, then being like literally rushed down the corridor to the MRI. And I remember thinking like, wow, this could be it. And, knowing that I could always be genetically predisposed to that. But in that moment, God forbid, I never would have had any type of access to care and to somewhere like the Caring Place to kind of start working through all of those traumas, around her death and around my own mortality. It comes up time and time again. And so I think having access to the Caring Place is so critical, because as you grow, you will look at it in the mirror day after day after day. And that's why I support the Caring Place like I do through volunteer work and other ways, because the kids will need it the rest of their life. So yes, it's been profound to me.
Wow. It's quite a statement.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry that we don't have any more time, because you're amazing and your stories are really amazing.
Yes.
But thank you so much for sharing your time with us, sharing your story. It's a special gift to all of us to hear your journey, and it keeps going on.
Yes.
Well, thank you. And thank everyone so much for joining us for this special National Volunteer Week interview with Nicole. From all of us at the Highmark Caring Place, we hope all of our outstanding volunteers have a wonderful National Volunteer Week.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, guys. Happy Volunteer Week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.